Kronos: The New Dawn is a bold new sci-fi horror from Polish developer Bloober Team. It proudly wears its influences on its sleeve while standing on its own with a brazen visual style. In a way then, it can lack originality, especially when gameplay is concerned, but what it does really well. As fans of the likes of Dead Space and The Evil Within, I just couldn't get enough of this twisted sci-fi mystery. Here's our full Kronos: The New Dawn PS5 review. The world is in ruin, all thanks to a calamitous event called the Change. Buildings are fractured, chunks of land float around aimlessly, and it's all coated in an oppressive layer of fog. What's worse is that, as you delve deeper into the leftovers of its neighbourhoods, mutated abominations fester. You play as the Traveller, a time-jumping figure tasked with heading back to 1980s Poland to collect the essence of key figures. Whether this is to save the humans of Earth or not is a little up in the air, as the mysterious collective's intentions are ominous at best. The story was my first big surprise with Kronos. It's the kind of narrative that isn't afraid to leave you with more questions than answers. The central story flirts with the questions of where the disease came from, how the change happened, and what your predecessor had to do with it all. These questions and answers are told through distinct locations, whether those are an apartment building or a steelworks factory. Letters and audio tapes fill in some of the blanks, with intermittent cutscenes doing the rest of the work. I loved how the protagonist, known only as ND3576, is played, with discordant dialogue and small flickers of humanity through her delivery. ND3576 is actually almost funny at times, despite the crushing world that surrounds her. So while it did admittedly take me a wee moment to settle into the groove of the game's narrative, one thing that I immediately gelled with is its visuals. If Kronos is scored on its visual design alone, it's gonna get full marks. This claustrophobic world is filled with brutalist architecture, phenomenal lighting, horrifying creature design, and highly detailed environments. The aesthetic carries on through strong cinematography, and while levels can be a bit samey towards the end, there's always some new visual aspect to enjoy. And topping it all off is a phenomenal score that pulsates between tense soundscapes, synthy tracks, and even ethereally unhinged choir work. It merges together to create a visual and auditory delight. Now, how much of that influences the gameplay experience, I hear you ask? Well, the gameplay in Kronos is likely the most familiar aspect of the game. The guns, the level design itself, and even features like a stomp are all pulled from other games within the genre. You've likely played something like Kronos in that regard, even if everything it does is still to a high standard. There are some little pockets of unique magic though, like the design of the creature nests, which are lined with the mutated remains of the fallen. Paranoia really sets in as the gurgling sound design lets you know that an enemy is nearby, but it's hard to decipher at times what is the environment and what is an enemy. It's a deliberate design choice that kept me on the edge of my seat. Then there's this body scanner indicator, a little coloured marker on your gun that indicates which bodies are alive and waiting to pounce and which are truly dead. It's a small thing, but it massively amps immersion as you walk through hallways littered with mutated corpses. And then there are the more out there areas of the game as you use gravity boots to jump across various platforms. It's trippy and always delivers some of the best visuals in the game, as do segments that see environments change in an instant, constantly keeping you on your toes. Another particularly tense inclusion is the merge mechanic, which sees enemies try to combine their power with foes you've beaten. If they merge, enemies become bigger, stronger, and much more difficult to kill. You can burn bodies if you have a fuel torch on you, but even still, it's a great way to amp up the tension, especially since enemies are so aggressive and ammo so limited. Enemy variety is quite strong then, as you get regular enemies, chargers, big brutes, multi-legged acid spewers that scale walls and ceilings, and then a tougher combined version of enemies too. What disappoints slightly is the combat itself. Now, gunplay is solid enough, and it certainly spices up in the latter parts of the game as new equipment and weapons are discovered. However, we couldn't help but feel like it was missing something, like the dismemberment from Dead Space. The merge feature is nice, but overall combat lacks that dynamic feel. Now I do not want this coming off like combat is bad, because it certainly isn't. There are some fights across its campaign, especially regarding bosses, that are a lot of fun, especially when you can let loose with your weapons. Between combat encounters, Kronos will see you explore fairly linear spaces with a couple of offshoot optional areas. It's in these optional areas that you'll find an abundance of energy and core currency, ammo, pieces of lore, and even weapon variants. It's sort of like a Resident Evil game where you'll hunt down keys, passcodes, and random knickknacks to unlock doors, or there's going to be an occasional puzzle here or there. Energy and cores are used to upgrade your character, with energy dealing with weapon upgrades, improving damage, stability, clip size, and so on, whereas cores upgrade inventory space, health, and gadgets. There's a nice flow of currency and upgrades, so across the roughly 16 hours it takes to complete the game, you'll always feel like you're making meaningful progress with your character. It'll likely even entice some players back for the new Game Plus mode and harder difficulty, which is unlocked once you've completed the game. Now, no matter how upgraded your character is, there's always a good power balance. Inventory space is limited, so you need to choose your weapons, ammo, gadgets, and healing supplies wisely. And once your inventory is full, you need to either delete or use something to clear that space. You can't just drop it and come back for it later. That might feel a bit restrictive for some people, but I personally really enjoyed managing my inventory, figuring out which items would serve me best and whether items I found along the way were really worth taking up the space. It means when combat encounters come around, I'm always looking for ways to deal with enemies efficiently. So I played the game on the PS5 Pro, which is the footage you're watching here today, where there's a quality and performance mode targeting 30 and 60 frames per second respectively. The game looks stunning, as I've mentioned before, but there are often frame rate stutters as you enter new areas. Now, I'm not Digital Foundry here, so I didn't have counters out, but the frame rate did feel like it was aiming for 60 rather than locked in at it. Additionally, DualSense haptics are a little bit underwhelming. The thuds of gunshots are appropriately chunky, but adaptive trigger implementation is minimal, and some aspects are missing any form of haptics at all. It's a shame after Bloober's excellent DualSense work with its last project, Silent Hill 2. So, Kronos: The New Dawn is a brilliant addition to the survival horror genre. In a lot of ways, it's derivative, especially when it comes to how it plays and how it feels. However, Bloober has injected enough charm, enough curiosities, and enough weirdness to not only make it its own thing, but something almost endearing. With impeccable visuals, an entrancing score, and a captivatingly dark, time-travelling mystery, Kronos: The New Dawn is a delectable piece of sci-fi horror. I'm giving Kronos: The New Dawn an 8 out of 10. Thank you so much for checking out my review of Kronos: The New Dawn. Let me know if you plan to pick this game up down in the comments below. And while you're down there, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more PlayStation video content just like this. Anyway, until next time, I've been Aiden, and this has been Push Square.